Dark Magician is probably the most well-known Yu-Gi-Oh card of all time. Okay, maybe it's Exodia the Forbidden One, just because of the whole Exodia Obliterate thing. Or maybe again it's Blue Eyes White Dragon, just because it's a cool dragon and there's also like 3 of them and they're all owned by the most successful twink in anime, but my money is still on Dark Magician. It's the ace card of the main character in the first series of the show, it's had decades of cards added to boost not just his power, but to boost the cards he even looks funny at, and his design is so iconic that you can just change the design entirely and people still read it as Dark Magician. All of that is well and good, but has he literally ever been good? I don't mean on your playground with all the other kids playing the worst cards you've ever seen in your life and calling it broken. I mean in any kind of tournament. Has Dark Magician ever been a good card? The answer's, probably? Maybe? Oh, and if you wanna, come into the Discord. We're building up a great, inclusive, and sweet community over there, and I'd love to hear input from y'all on what videos I could make. If you like this video, then like it. It lets me know to keep making more stuff like it. And that goes 10 times more for subscribing. Soon, I really want to do a marathon stream of reading every single Yu-Gi-Oh card in existence. I think that'll take about a month and ruin my life, so let's make it happen. The first time Dark Magician was seen in a deck that actually topped a tournament was all the way back in 2004, which makes sense for such an old card. And since the deck list is so old, a lot of the information for these deck building choices are just lost to time, so let's try and extrapolate why they'd even think of using Dark Magician in this deck. Well, let's see, the deck has 39 cards in it, so I'm going to assume they didn't mark down a Metamorphosis to make the extra deck actually exist. Either that, or they were just flexing the fact that Dark Paladin existed and would never hit the field because there's no Buster Blader. There are 25 cards in the extra deck, which was okay at the time because fusion monsters were so bad and specific you could run literally every single one and your deck would only be heavier, not better. They've got some weird choices in there, like Fiber Jar. Guess you've got to be meming if you're playing Dark Magician anyway, so I'm not surprised. But I think I found the actual honest-to-God reason. Skilled Dark Magician. I always found it funny that this guy studies under his master and just took his name and an adjective. Better Dark Magician. Way cooler Dark Magician. That'll be my name. He's probably a total dork, and I love it. But if he sees you activate 3 spell cards, or your opponent, I guess, but good luck with that, you can tribute him to bring out his master. Cool, makes sense. 2500 attack is pretty big for this era, so why wasn't everyone doing this? Skilled Dark Magician even has 1900 attack, which was a huge stat line back in the day for a level 4. Well, the main issue is that most of the time, it just wasn't the best card for the job. With cards like DD Warrior and DD Warrior Lady able to get rid of monsters regardless of stats, Gravekeeper Spy having a huge 2k wall of defense stapled to a monster that already doesn't need to get rid of itself to summon another monster from the deck, or even Air Knight Parshath having the same amount of attack and making up for the fact that you have to tribute it by being an insane card generation machine, Skilled Dark Magician wasn't really looked at for having the ability to very circumstantially summon something that was literally 600 points stronger. Just run Malevolent Nuzzler, I guess. I really don't have to get into why tributing 2 monsters for the big guy himself wasn't worth it. So Dark Magician's first tournament top was probably a fluke, and the deck would be better for not running it. The big beatsticks that called themselves Skilled Dark Magician were okay, but not worth running most of the time. So I guess it was used back before anyone really knew how deck building worked, but that's okay. We were all like 7, and we wanted to use the cool card that we saw on the TV, so when was he next used? 8 years later, in 2012, we skipped completely over the GX and 5Ds era, and a lot of the Zexal era, but Dark Magician was seen in the tournament scene. Wahoo! At least this was before he got a bunch of cards that called him out by name, and to be like the cool centerpiece of a deck, so this was all of his own merit still. It's in Agents. The planetary fairy dudes. I'm pretty sure we're joking, but I'll check the attached deck profile to be sure.
Dark Magician.
Oh, alright, we gotta talk about the Dark Magician.
We were at this all-you-can-eat sushi place, and I was kind of tipsy with sake and everything. I wanted to make the event a bit more interesting, so I challenged Samosh. He's actually in the top 4 right now. Have a match with my agents versus his water, like a full-on match. Yeah, the loser has to play Dark Magician in a side deck, and if we get a feature match, I have to side it in.
Oh, so this card is so bad it had to be memed into a side deck purely for the sake of making it into a feature match. Gotcha. Hilarious. This placement doesn't count. Next year after that, we have him in spellbooks, so at least the spellcaster's in the spellcaster deck. Still only on the side, so I wonder what...
Side deck, best guy, Dark Magician. This was a bet, and he killed a couple people. It was pretty cool.
You actually beat people with Dark Magician?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
He's like ended lives. Like, he's the best guy.
Lives.
Oh, perfect. It's a bet again. At least this is the first spoken confirmation that this card ever hit the field. Man, sounds like he's joking, but I guess this is the first tournament where Dark Magician actually did something and there's any kind of confirmation whatsoever. I guess that's something to be celebrated. Another year later, it was played in Burning Abyss and cited at 1 copy, so it was a meme again, and I'm not going to really count it. You can choose if that's fair or not, since there's no video, but I'm pretty sure it would just be the same old story of friends getting drunk and saying that it'd be funny if they had the bad card in their deck, so let me just save us the time. That brings us into the Arc 5 era, and we've only really had one Dark Magician deck that won a game on his back, and it wasn't even the deck that had him mained in 2004. I would say that we're off to a terrible start, but it's been over a decade, so how long am I going to call this a start? Still going to keep going into everyone's favorite year, 2016, where Dark Magician was used in the deck no shit named Death Awaits, which may just be, and I mean this with no exaggeration, the worst deck I have ever seen in my life. I'm not trying to be rude, but this was in the Cosmo, Monarch, Draco Pals Triangle format, and all of the top 8 were those decks. But they were beaten by what I imagine to be the weirdest house-ruled shit I've ever seen in my life. Dude runs Pot of Greed and 4 copies of Monster Reborn. He's just in his own world right now. Man is zooted off a perk 40. Dark Magician may be the least interesting card in this deck. He's got Mad Sword Beast, and he won a tournament. I have no idea why there isn't a video to watch this deck profile. I think it may have been the greatest tournament to ever grace the eyes of God, and I wish I was there to witness it. My current theory is that he just paid every single opponent $5 to instantly concede, and every single person took the deal because this format was terrible. I do not blame them. Let me know if you were there. I want to make a video about this. Reach out to me any way you can. Please, for the love of God, I need to see how Death Awaits worked. Okay, we can call that the era of Nothing Was Lost and move on to later in 2016. If you know competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, you know Jeff Jones. Plain and simple. It took this guy to actually pilot a deck that had Dark Magician in it to success. Not to mention, there was actual Dark Magician support now. Thank God. He's gone past meme and may actually be a real boy after all. Ain't no strings on me. It went like 50th? They don't actually care to mark his placement because it's so low. But hey, that's, hey guys, I'm starting to think this card might be bad. It was a back row heavy control deck that made use of Dark Magician support to gather some neat advantage, but it sure isn't the powerhouse that Blue Eyes had already cemented itself as around this time. Watch that video if you haven't. Dark Magician was somehow the saddest ace monster ever made, even with a whole deck and IRL Yugi backing him up. Oh, but he was used in Yang Zing a year later. I wonder how he made that.
First 2 cards, Dark Magician.
Ooh, look at that.
Blue Eyes White Dragon out of the movie pack, because that's all
Movie art only.
That's the only thing. That's the only yeah, whatever. Best cards in the deck. I couldn't find 2 more cards. I was too lazy.
Oh, perfect. He just brought a 13-card side deck. I love it. Don't worry, Rio de Janeiro had my personal favorite build of Dark Magician, where it's just every Burning Abyss and Gravekeepers monster, somehow putting the Gravekeepers in the extra deck, and of course siding for Mystic Mine. Yu-Gi-Oh's artificially generated. I'm losing my mind. I have found and uncovered a conspiracy of hundreds, if not thousands of fake decks. Probably fake decks, either that or the most corrupt tournaments I've ever known in my life. And all of this was because I just wanted to know if Dark Magician actually topped anything. He is not topping any tournaments unless it's in triple driver nonsense in Poland? I don't get it. I don't understand. At the risk of pulling an H-Bomber guy and scrapping this whole video idea just to focus on a crazy conspiracy theory turned conspiracy fact, let's just shove all that away and see if the funny card ever did anything that wasn't a participation trophy tiered accomplishment. I don't know what's going on anymore. I might have to look more into this. Now for the moment where the title gets answered. Was Dark Magician ever actually good? Well, that's tough to decide. What makes a card good? Is it consistent placements? Is it placements over the course of many years? Is it having high placements? Dark Magician has all of these, but it's still incredibly difficult to have ever called it good because it was rarely ever in the main deck, and it was only ever cited because it was really funny to see him. How can you make this card good? Well, we've tried building a whole deck around him with like one good card to show for it. What if we just did that again, but very transparently? What if we made the card really good? Like, really, really good. Good enough that people who don't even play the game would look at it and think Yu-Gi-Oh's dead again because this card has warped everything around it. You know where this is going. Oh dear God, he skinned his friend. Yeah, that's kind of the whole competitive history of Dark Magician. You don't need me to tell you that running Dragoon was a very good idea if you liked winning the card game. You probably lived through the format or have seen this thing in your regular everyday life. Dark Magician was only ever good in this package, or in the weirdest, probably non-canon tournaments you've ever known. I tried not to get too bogged down by these decks, but look at them. This card had to be stapled to broke just to do something. It's kinda sad when you see how well Blue Eyes fared. Or Harpies, or Red Eyes, or, like, the legendary Fisherman.